Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Star Bros podcast, where Jan is sitting next to me and shaking his head in approval because this is take number 3, and he stopped us on the first 2 takes because apparently I can't say something like good evening or good morning with either not laughing or getting it inaccurate for some of our listeners who might be listening at a different time than when we are recording. But here we are now. We're on take 3. And I'm joined as always by my bro host, Jan Solo.
And I'm joined by my bro host, Ben Skywalker.
And you have a question for me?
I don't.
No? Okay.
I think you covered all the bases. Wherever anybody is on the dimension of time,
yes,
they're covered.
They're covered now, right? So really, we should just get into things
Sure.
and talk about some Star Wars. But no, first, before we do that, how have you been lately?
I've been well. End of summer vibes, right?
Yeah, it's getting kind of weird, isn't it? People are coming back to the office and actually around again, which frankly is kind of nice. It was getting so quiet that I wondered if people work there anymore. There's some people I feel like I haven't seen in months, so
yeah,
it's been weird.
Same thing. But yeah, it's back to school time for your kids.
Back to school to prove to Dad that I'm not a fool.
Right.
Please tell me you know that quote.
A little Billy Madison.
Yeah, you got your lunch packed up, boots tied tight.
Yep.
Hope you don't get in a fight. That's how I'm going to send my kids to school.
I love it. But when I was driving over here tonight, because we take turns going to one another's homes record our episodes, and I was coming over to your place tonight at the same time I always do, but it was getting dark.
I know.
Sad.
I looked up what time the sun was setting on my phone for some odd reason. Oh, because the light always turns on in my living room at 30 minutes before the sun sets. And my wife is like, why is the light flickering? Anyway, it's not flickering. It just turned on like it always does. But it was so early that she was like, it doesn't make sense that it's on. I looked up on my phone. Sure enough, sunset, 7:45.
I never get used to it. I never get used to the changing of the seasons.
I don't know. I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
I'm ready for summer to be over. I'm done.
I feel like it catches me off guard every time though. But pretty soon it'll be dark. It'll be spooky season.
Spoopy season.
Spoopy season.
Cannot wait.
Maybe we'll do another episode. What do we call it? The Cantina of Terror?
Cantina of Terror. It might be around the same time that we go to Comic-Con.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I don't remember the date of Comic-Con. You got to remind me.
I think it's October 8th.
Okay, so it'll be a little before that.
Yep, I think it's that second Saturday in October. But
what are we gonna do this time for the Cantina of Terror? We got to figure that out.
I don't know. We'll do some planning. But,
yeah.
Speaking of planning, I think we're gonna be bringing some cool Broaxium stickers to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So if we'll let you guys know where we are. And hopefully we get to connect and meet some of you guys, and we'll give you stickers.
Yay! Yeah. You'll put them on your car, and everybody will see them. And
or somebody else's car, and that's a problem.
Just actually do that anyway. Just go. We'll give you as many as you need to go little room around the city of New York, and boost our listenership by 500%.
Yes.
No. So I had one other thing I was going to share. So
please.
We went last week to visit my parents, who are in Virginia. Saw my brother while we were there too, and so had some nice family time while we were away. And my wife had the brilliant idea to go to an antique store. And I say brilliant because at first I was like, okay, antique, whatever. If you want to do that, sure. I don't know. But when we got there, like, it was a brilliant idea, and here is why. At least for someone like me, there were a ton of Star Wars things there.
Really?
A ton.
Oh, yes. You shared a picture. Some cool vintage toys.
Exactly. There were vintage toys. Well, it was funny because I'm like, vintage toys, and they were made in the 90s. I'm like, well, that's not vintage to me. Is it? Maybe it is.
It's like Linkin Park on the classic rock station.
That would be scary.
That's around the corner, I think.
It probably is. Yeah. Actually, they might not have radio stations anymore by the time it gets to classic rock, but we'll find out.
Well, they kind of don't. It's just like robot DJs now.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. My son turned on, he has like a radio that he turns on every once in a while and is playing music just on a loop. And I think it was, I can't remember what it was. It sounded like Spanish, but rap. So I was really confused about what was happening. Anyway, yeah. I was surprised. I didn't really think about antique shopping as a place to go and find Star Wars stuff. But it was every booth that I went to, there was no, not every booth. It was probably like 1 in 3 booths though had something Star Wars in there. Whether it was a VHS tape, a comic book, there were slap bracelets.
Oh yeah, remember those
with Qui-Gon and Maul on them and stuff. And that was the other surprising part. Most of them were prequel things.
Wow. Well, they went pretty hard with the merch for the prequels, I think.
They did. And I was also surprised by how cheap some of them were.
And that might be the volume that they created, right? There might just be so much out there that every flea market and lots of people's basements and stuff have that inflatable Watto that you can take in the pool or whatever.
Yeah.
So
very specific, but yeah, inflatable.
Or the Nuke Gunray body pillow. You could just snuggle.
If they had that, I would have bought it. But they did have one thing that was really cool that I almost bought. No, actually, I'm kidding. I would have bought, but I live on a budget, so I didn't.
What was it?
A lunchbox. An Empire Strikes Back lunchbox. Do you want to have any ideas how expensive it was?
So hang on. Was it from that era? Was it?
It was like original? The metal ones that,
Wow. Did it have the thermos? I think that's a big part of it.
I mean, I didn't open it to find out. I felt if I did that I would probably break it and therefore have to buy it. And
that's a thing from what I understand. The people who collect the original lunchboxes like to have the thermos with the lunchbox and have that be in good condition too.
So I wonder how much it would have been if it had the thermos, or if this is the price it was with the thermos. I can't tell you because I didn't open it up.
What was the point of the thermos? Was there were they giving little kids coffee?
If you put your soup in there, something warm.
Soup? Okay.
I don't know. I didn't live then.
Back they would send kids into the coal mine for the day with their Empire Strikes Back lunchbox. But I feel
like I shouldn't be laughing at that.
$100.
It's in that range, yeah. $135.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Is that too high? Would you ever buy that?
No. Well, I mean, if I was rich, yeah, I'd buy everything. But
I mean, that doesn't really feel like I have to be rich to buy, but it also feels like if I'm spending $135 on something,
you have to justify it to yourself.
I have to really justify it.
You have to be able to look at yourself the next morning while you're brushing your teeth and look at yourself in the mirror and go, "That's fine. It's fine. I did that, right?"
Is it? Is it really? Like,
right.
I'd rather spend $135 on the next big Lego set or something.
Okay, cool.
Than that, because I get a little bit more use out of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just me.
But you got to see it.
But I got to see it. Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Some kid back in 1980, whatever, packed his lunch in that lunchbox every day and had the cool new Star Wars lunchbox.
I hope his lunch still isn't in there. That'd be gross.
That would be really gross.
Especially if it's still in the thermos.
That 37-year-old coffee or whatever.
that he's taken into the coal mines.
Yeah.
Anyway, great idea, though. If you are looking for anything Star Wars, I just learned is go antique shopping.
Go to antique shopping.
You never know what you're going to find.
Go to a big flea market. Those two.
That too. Mm-hmm.
We have quite a few around here in Pennsylvania.
Yes. A lot of fleas. Lots and lots of fleas.
Yes.
I mean, we're already talking Star Wars, but let's get into Star Wars. What do you say?
Let's do that. Yes.
What is this first one called?
It's called
News from Across the Galaxy. Oh my God. I cannot. Oh, you're going to kill my kids when they hear that one.
What do you got?
I don't, nothing after that. I'm just at a loss of words. Oh, wow. I was going to start with the bad news first, but I can't after something like that. We just got to keep the laughs going.
Well,
okay.
Real quick. I assume every once in a while we get a new listener, and maybe this is the first time somebody's listening to this podcast. And that's just a thing we do. That's the jingle that goes with the first segment.
I need to come up with a better one for mine. Mine's just, it's so terrible compared to yours.
Yours is great.
I just avoided saying a word.
We are artists. We're experimenting. We're seeing what happens.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What's the first piece of news? Let's talk about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, please.
Obi-Wan. We just watched that series.
We sure did.
And Disney Plus is really good. I mean, this isn't like shocking that it's going to happen because they're really good at releasing like the behind the scenes and making of soon after the big series comes out.
Yep.
And everything they do for Marvel and even for Star Wars. And so we are getting Obi-Wan Kenobi, A Jedi's Return on September 8th, that's Disney Plus Day, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they decided to release that and release a trailer with it. I mean, nothing too shocking. Like I said, like this is kind of just status quo for them with all their series so far. But I'm excited to see the behind the scenes for this one. I feel like I want to hear from Deborah Chow a little bit. I want to hear from Ewan McGregor and of course Anakin Skywalker himself. Like I want to hear them talk about how they brought this character back to life and stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. I just like, we're going to be talking about the behind the scenes stuff for the making of all the Star Wars movies in the 70s and 80s. So, I mean, it's just fun to see all the behind the scenes stuff, in my opinion.
I agree. And one of the things I really enjoyed in the build up to Obi-Wan was seeing Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen being able to enjoy the change in sentiment.
Oh, he has a name? It's not Anakin?
It is Anakin Hayden Christensen Schwartz.
Oh.
He changed it because, showbiz.
Yeah.
Showbiz, baby.
You would know.
I would. I would?
Past life? I don't know.
Past life. But it was so
You'll know one day.
I will know. That's threatening the way you said that.
That was, and that wasn't intended to be. Keep going before this goes off the rails.
I was so happy to see them being able to enjoy like good feedback from the audience, fans being nostalgic, happy to see them, good vibes. Like it was really nice to see all that. So I think I'd like to think that they carried some of that into, the set every day. And it'd be cool to see them behind the scenes kind of just having fun and enjoying it because they deserve it after all these years of unfortunately, ups and downs.
What part of the series are you excited to see a little bit more how they made?
That's a really good question. I mean, obviously, like all the conflict, like the fight scenes, the ultimate lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Darth.
Darth.
Yes. But probably some other stuff too. I'd love to see how they did some of the sets. Like some of them seem to be that great volume mix of practical effects and the volume in the background. I'd love to see how they put some of that stuff together. I hope they dig into something like the names of the different Jedi scribbled on the walls.
Yeah. The Easter egg things that they did. Yeah.
I'd love to maybe uncover a couple more Easter eggs in the watching, but yeah, the whole thing's going to be great. I really geeked out on tonight's topic. And I've really, really enjoyed, I think Star Wars has been especially good about giving you behind the scenes stuff.
For sure.
And I think this is just going to be another good version of that. But what about you? Excited to see anything in particular?
I'm always excited to see the stuff about the choreography and how they prepare for the lightsaber duels. And I mean, I'm specifically excited to see how they kind of came back together and did the the flashback one in particular, just because I think it was a great fight. But more importantly, it feels a little bit like they're each going back in time themselves, and I wanted to see how fun they had making it, and feeling like they were back in the early 2000s, shooting Attack of the Clones and all that again. So I'm looking forward to that. Honestly, I think the other thing, like I already mentioned, is I want to hear a little bit more from Deborah Chow. I feel like I didn't hear too much from her other than like the stuff like beforehand. Like I just want to hear her thought process going into taking the responsibility of making this series for this beloved character, and how she approached it.
Good call.
I'd say those two things.
Cool.
Personally.
Cool.
All right, let's move on to another piece of news. What do you got?
A really short, quick one. Knights of the Old Republic, the video game reboot that everybody has been kind of waiting for, really excited about. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, I don't want to read too much into it, is changing studios. So the studio that was originally tasked with creating this game for us was called Aspire Media, and they were based in Austin, Texas. And they moved all the way across the Gulf to Saber International, which is based in Florida. Although,
wait. There's a real Saber International?
Yes.
Like The Office?
I thought that was pronounced Sabre.
I mean, isn't it Saber?
It's
Saber, right? It's in Florida, isn't it?
I don't.
Georgia or something?
I think it was in Georgia.
Yeah.
But it was definitely south of the Mason-Dixon line, as they say.
Yeah, that's weird.
But the thing is that they're actually going to be using teams who are based all across Eastern Europe who work for Saber, because cheaper.
in a time when inflation is high.
Inflation is high.
Let's talk about economics, folks.
Right. Buckle up.
What? What was that pause for?
I don't know. That pause was our signal to move on.
Oh, okay, cool. So nice. I don't know if that's good news or not. I really don't know enough about these things.
I
I'm
don't
not
want
going
to
to speculate.
I don't want to speculate.
The
It's
good news
news
is we are still getting the game.
yes,
That's the news.
presumably.
Yeah.
Have you been to Florida?
I have been to Florida. It's an interesting place.
It sure is.
It's a great place. Actually, it's a great place.
What do you like about it?
The beaches,
Okay.
they're great, and Disney World. Even though I've only been there once.
Disney World is nice.
Here, my wife is listening to this, going Disney World because of those memes that are out there. Have you seen those?
I've seen those.
They're very funny. Anyway, let's go on to the next piece of news.
Please.
All right, I'm going to get somber for a second because I don't want to end on this note.
You are?
John Boyega was in the news this week. Did you hear about this?
I sure did.
John Boyega was interviewed, and in that interview, I think they were talking about, what's the chances that he could come back to Star Wars if he's completely moved on. And his quote was, "At this point, I'm cool off it. I'm good off it." And he said that it's a good confirmation point where you can just enjoy him and other things, basically. And speaking about Finn being in other material where he's not the actor, is like in comic books or in video games or something like that. Essentially he's saying, I'm not coming back. Now it also sounded like it wasn't like it's not like that animosity. It felt like there was a little bit of a rift between him and Lucasfilm or Disney, right, for a bit. And he had to address some things. It sounds like some of that has toned down a little bit, where I think he's brought up things like, hey, they're doing a good job, make sure there's representation and things like that. Like they're working on those things. But he's just okay. He's like, I don't feel the need to come back for. He's moving on with his career. All right, what does that mean for Star Wars? Well, we don't know, because I think this is interesting because never say never.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned when I shared this with you, Harrison Ford was kind of over Star Wars too, and he came back.
Harrison Ford was over Star Wars. He was over Indiana Jones because years and years had gone by and he had enough money for many lifetimes.
Yeah.
But, never say never, because something might entice you back in.
Yeah.
So I think I have the same read on that you do, where I feel good that some of John Boyega's concerns have been addressed. He seems to feel good about where the character is and where the character is sort of blossoming and becoming more than he was in the movies, and I think he's excited about that. And maybe just feels like a good time to do something else and be associated with something else and enjoy something different.
My only concern with all this is because what they're doing now is they went ahead in time and they wrapped up their trilogy, but it's not looking very easy to move beyond this.
Right.
So what they've started to do is go backwards in time and try to fill in some of the gaps in between. And Lucasfilm has done a great job doing a lot of that, like with Obi-Wan and with Mandalorian and the time periods in which it takes place, and then the High Republic, of course. I think it's great, but eventually I think we're going to want the story to move forward in time, not backwards in time. And we're going to want to see where Rey goes, where Finn goes, where Poe goes.
Or at least
I hope that's the result, actually.
At least the version of the future that they would live on in, like what happens to not just these characters, but the galaxy. Like how did things
exactly.
evolve? And,
that's what people want to know.
I think, and I think they got to go there at some point.
I do too.
And
it's just going to be a little bit harder now.
Maybe, and I think Andor is kind of priming things for that a little bit. And I don't want to get off on a tangent on Andor, but it might be a good segue.
Well, we're going to talk about Andor in a second anyway, so yeah.
So some of the stuff that I was reading about that was, what's his name? Tony Gilroy?
Yep.
Tony Gilroy saying, the original Star Wars saga is really kind of like this movie about a royal family. And the fact of the matter is, in this fictional galaxy, there's billions of people who are everyday people living their lives, working, doing their thing, who are subject to the events of whatever's happening in the universe.
Yep.
Let's tell their story. And I'm like, well, that's cool. That's a kind of a cool departure. And saying there's not going to be Jedi in it.
Yep.
and all that stuff. And I feel like it's kind of, even though it's still in this timeline that we know, it's showing us that from a different angle. And I feel like after something like this, it'll be even easier to jump ahead in time and say, like, what does the galaxy look like after the events of the Skywalker saga?
Yeah. What does it look like? Maybe they fast forward enough time to where, I hate to say it this way, like if they did want to portray it with another actor, they could, because he's aged or something like that. So I don't. If John Boyega doesn't want to come back, he doesn't have to come back. But if we still want to get more Finn, Lucasfilm could say, like, hey, we're ready to do some more Finn. And John Boyega, you're the first one. You get the call. Do you want it? No? Okay, well, we're going to move on and figure it out. Like, they could do something like that. And they could still get Daisy Ridley and things like that, too. So it might be hard getting Oscar Isaac. He's quite the star right now.
Yeah, it seems like it.
So, but anyway, I hope that one day they can still. I feel like there's story to tell there.
Yep.
And maybe they fast forward to the point where like there's like they're comfortable leaving that story where it was and showing the aftermath of whatever they build. Yeah. So, we'll see, but don't expect John anytime soon. I'm just glad he's happy with it.
Yeah.
Me too. That he's in a better place. It seemed like with everything that was coming out at first, like. He had a lot of things that he needed to solve with Disney, and so I'm just glad that he's has a good relationship with it still.
Agreed.
With the experience. He kind of talked about it in the interview of how it really helped set him in motion as an actor, but he couldn't see himself playing the same person for years and years and years on end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, got that out of the way. Do you want to talk about Andor?
Sure.
What about it? Or you already talked about Andor, so I'll talk about Andor.
Please.
So, if you haven't seen some of the stuff that's coming out yet, first of all, there is an official clip. We're less than a month away, right, from Andor coming out. So Star Wars released a little official clip from it. And it's some lines that were in the trailer that we already heard, but we heard like the rest of the conversation. Looks great so far. But they're starting their press tours, and you're seeing Andor everywhere now. So if you want to go over and listen to some great interviews of Diego Luna and a few of the other actors in the series, Mon Mothma, Genevieve O'Reilly, is that her name? Is also one of those that is interviewed. You can go check them out on a lot of different podcasts have them, but we're going to mention those of our friends at Father and Son podcast.
Yes.
Make sure to go check out their interviews with those great actors and hear just their thoughts on making the series. So just a little teaser that's out there, but I listened to it and I'm getting more and more excited for it. Like
pumped.
You said, it sounds like it's going to be a very grounded series, more relatable for a lot of people, and real, like there's just going to be a lot about it that Andor is going to be going through that might be relatable. But even more, one of the questions that I liked the most that somebody asked was, hey, if in Rogue One we learned that the rebellion is built on hope, what is the Empire built on? And the actors were like stunned by how good of a question that was, and they talk about ambition and fear as being the opposite of hope, but more about how it's like people in pursuit of their own individual power and one-upping each other. And things to get that power. So I don't know, just that question alone got me excited.
I like that.
So go check that out if you haven't already.
Will do. Shall we?
I was telling our listeners, not you.
Okay.
I hope you check it out too.
I will.
It's good.
Okay. Shall we head to the main part?
Yeah. What's that one called?
It's not the main part. It's called
It's our second part.
It's called More to the Story.
Dun, 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 dun.
Well done.
I don't know. I made that on the spot.
I like that.
It's not as funny as yours. Dang it.
Dang it. So this evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you happen to be, we're talking about the excellent Disney Plus series, docuseries called Light and Magic.
Where are my nerds at?
Where are my nerds at? Which I didn't realize was directed by the great Lawrence Kasdan.
It is, yes.
How cool is that?
Yes.
So it's hard to kind of sum this whole thing up, but one of the things that I'll say right out of the gate that's really satisfying for me is it just seems like they had a camera in the room all the time, right? Like
it seemed like that, and it seemed like they did a good job of finding that footage again wherever they could. Like, how did they I don't know. I'm always amazed by how much they're able to keep of that stuff.
Yes, and keep in good condition and be able to kind of stitch it together and tell this story cohesively. Like it's amazing, um, and I think kind of done by accident. Like it seems like people are kind of documenting things not necessarily for a future docuseries on television or whatever.
Right.
I think they were just sort of like documenting their process and taking pictures of one another as friends and so on. So it's really cool to be able to have all of this stuff to work with Light and Magic and be able to kind of go behind the scenes in a way that I feel like I haven't been able to before. Like I didn't know the stories of the interpersonal relationships of these people, things like that. I didn't know like how much luck and like serendipity was involved.
Oh yeah.
Like some of these, it just seems to me like a little bit of right place, right time in a really cool way.
Yeah, and none of them really got these huge. I don't sense like huge egos. I think they even mentioned in there. There's like the egos just weren't allowed. They didn't work there. If you had an ego, it's not gonna fly. Because most of these people are extremely talented. At that point in time, when they started, most of them didn't know what they were doing. So if you had an ego, why? How?
Yeah.
You know, it was like you had no confidence in what you were doing yet. It was like problem solving, and you just keep jumping from problem to problem until you solved them all.
Improvising, building things, not sure if anything's ever really going to work, and you know some stuff doesn't, and then some stuff ends up working really well, and that must have been a terrific feeling. But I couldn't help but the whole time I was watching this series, especially like the first 2 episodes, think about how much it felt like the traditional startup that we think of today.
Yes,
where it's like kind of just very casual, in like some sequestered place. They're kind of off somewhere, and they've got a little bit of resources, a lot of time, and they're kind of playing off of each other.
Yeah.
And I went looking, and I was like, gosh, like this seems like over time, it was such a healthy creative culture. Like there were some, you know, bumps in the road, but along the way, like some of the stuff you just mentioned about no egos, things like that. And I went and I looked up and I wanted to see like what are the hallmarks of like a healthy creative culture
in a company?
In a company, yes, because this is a business.
And I'm going to pause you right there before you get to that. What I liked about this was, as I was watching it, I'm like, there needs to be more Star Wars sometimes. I was tempted to think that, but we got to remember, this wasn't about the making of Star Wars. This was about the creation of a company that supported Star Wars,
yes,
and is heavily tied to Star Wars because of how it's heavily tied to George Lucas and what he needed to accomplish with Star Wars.
A huge part of its identity.
Right. But it is about the company.
Yep.
And I liked that because I feel like we got some angles and vantage points that we wouldn't have gotten if we were just so fixated on Star Wars.
Yes, and there's a lot of like winding roads that this company went down that led back to Star Wars sometimes. Like after Jurassic Park, George Lucas saying, okay, now I feel like we're on our way and I can eventually do episode 1 soon.
Yeah.
Based on the technology.
Well, which we'll get to in a second, but I want to let you ask your question or whatever you're going to do, the health of a company.
I wanted to share, so these are the 6 characteristics of a highly creative culture that innovates. And there's a lot made these days about like, oh, we have to be innovative here and there, and it's hard to force it. It's really hard to force it. But if you look at ILM, it just seems like every few years they were churning out stuff that people said was impossible. Couldn't be done. Pushing the boundaries of technology.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about how one of the things that we really liked was the way that George Lucas pushed people without kind of instilling the fear of failure in them.
Yes.
And just saying stuff like, somebody would say, oh, you know, George, it's impossible.
I don't think we can do that.
I'd say, well, why don't you just try?
Why don't you just think about it? I think the lines that I heard was like, why don't you just think about it?
Yeah.
It wasn't even try. It was like, just think about it.
It's like that. That's not intimidating, right?
No.
That's not like, oh my gosh, my job's
inspiring.
on the line.
Yeah. It's just like, look, I understand it might be impossible, but think about it and see what else. And I guess the point was, you might come up with a different solution that solves that kind of gets halfway there, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
That is progress.
Yeah.
Right?
So anyway, let me hit you with this. So this is from, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There's some school in Boston. It's the Hamburger Business Review or whatever.
Oh yeah, the hamburger rights.
Yep. So so feature one or characteristic one of
We need to clarify. Harvard.
is that what it's called? That's how you say it. Okay.
For those who are like, what just happened?
Here's characteristic number one. So innovation emerges over time because there is no single person driving it.
Yeah.
This is a collective thing at ILM.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who owned a part of something or who bounced ideas off of each other or who collectively came together to kind of make something possible.
And that's something I appreciated watching this was how much of George Lucas is the director. It's all on him. But how much of this was just inspired by the people who were making something?
Huge chunk of it,
in this, and it could be everything. Like, I really like the part where they were talking about how they made the opening scene and wanted to make sure you understood how big this ship was, and the way they shot it with like the camera and the microvision. That talking about like making sure that the foreground was just as in focus as the background,
the light and the shadow,
and the lights and the shadow, exactly,
all
and
that stuff.
Do you think George was over there telling him to do all those things?
Absolutely not. And that I have a hot take about that.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So feature number 2 is deep listening.
Yep.
It seems like they really listened to each other and learned from each other and respected the opinions of one another. One of the main features is collaboration and building upon one another's ideas. So you never have to go it alone. Your friend can get you this far, and you can build on that a little bit, and somebody else will build upon that. I thought this one was really interesting. And tell me if you feel like you saw this in this documentary.
Okay.
The meaning of what you're doing becomes clear after.
Maybe. I don't know if I feel like I saw that one. Because I feel like in the moment they were just like really excited to be all working together.
It was almost like play in the moment.
It was, yeah. Like they were working on something hard and challenging, and that's all they did was live, eat, breathe, sleep, like all that in the same area, doing the same thing for days on end.
Yep.
But I don't know if like it. Did you?
I think I think some of them were just so lost in the joy of working on what they were working on.
Yeah.
Whether it was model building or trying to solve a problem or trying to figure out how to dolly a camera or whatever it was, like they were just kind of in that moment. And then later on, I think they were like, gosh, that was something special. Like we made a movie that like really resonated with people. We helped build this company. That
I see. Yeah. Like it wasn't really until afterwards that you realized how special it was what you made.
And I think sometimes what folks get wrong is trying to lead with the meaning a bit too much when maybe people haven't like kind of gotten lost in the work yet.
Right.
Of like, we're going to make the most amazing movie ever. And it's like, well, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. That's not what they were after. They were just after making a great story and
I think they're trying to impress each other
too. Push the boundaries. Too. Yeah.
Like, look what I can do. Cool. You did that. Let me try to do this.
Right.
I'll end on this one. Innovation is inefficient, and that's accepted. You break a lot of stuff.
You make a lot of mistakes. You probably do it wrong on your way to getting it right.
Correct.
Right? Like they talked about making a Photoshop in this, right? And I just looked at that original one, and it's like they just had a problem they were trying to solve, and they were inspired by it, and it created one of the best programs for, graphic design. That it's the standard within the industry.
Yes.
Not that I know how to use it. Every time I open it up, I'm very intimidated.
But that was true of a lot of things. Of like they tried to figure out a way to solve a real problem that they had, or George didn't want to, for example, spend all day in the editing room looking for some piece of film or something, and so they wanted to create digital editing. Like they're solving practical issues.
What I liked was that nobody came in the room really and said, "Go solve this problem. Here's your next assignment." It was all just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this? I want to go start working on that. Is that okay? Like the artist, I can't remember her name in one of the episodes, but like the one that was like really gifted at art and modeling and things like that, all of a sudden one day was just like, I want to go figure out how to do that on the computer, and just like left, and that's what she did.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that was encouraged, you didn't have to apply for a job or anything. I don't think that's how it sounded like it worked. It was just like, if you want to go work on it and figure it out, go do it.
Super cool.
That's like giving people the freedom to do that.
Super cool.
You know?
Well, what do you say we take it back to the very beginning?
Like before time?
No.
The Big Bang?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Not that far.
Okay. Where are we going?
To the beginning of making the original Star Wars movie.
Oh, okay. Sure.
What do you think of kind of the vibe and the environment? It seemed to me like the people creating the special effects for the first Star Wars movie were a bunch of kids who were hanging out together and having fun.
Like they called it a fraternity in a sort, like it was just a bunch of friends hanging out.
It was just like it was like a frat house. You're right.
Yeah. I really like too that they talk about how they got to know each other. Like some of them got to know each other through the famous monsters of Filmland. And it was like just about monsters, and they were inspired by that, learned that they loved movies and wanted to be involved in make movies, and they kind of like found each other through that. It was just like, if this person knows that guy and knows a guy who knows how to do something like that, and they all just flocked together, which was really weird. And it sounded like it all started with Dykstra.
Yes.
Right. Like he was the one that got everybody that he needed to come and make this thing.
Yeah, and it sounds like he had kind of a unique and different type of leadership style, and he was a leader amongst these folks.
He's very charismatic, and they talked about that. Yeah.
Yep. But as a quick aside here, so that Monster Magazine, all those like stop motion animation, claymation type movies and stuff.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I saw something about Ray Harryhausen on TV, and he's one of the main people who did all that back then innovative stop motion stuff. And I watched this documentary, explained his process. It had a little bit of like what we saw in this documentary, like with on Hoth, for example. Like the trapdoor opens up in the set and you pop up, you move the thing a fraction of an inch, you close the trapdoor, you take a shot, you come back up, you do it again, you do it all day long. And something about that fascinated me. And then at some point I saw something about, I think it was Return of the Jedi, some behind the scenes stuff about Return of the Jedi. And some things like vividly stuck out to me. One of them was, I can't remember who, but one of the characters in Jabba's palace, they had like an air conditioner hose. They had an air conditioner and they had a hose hooked up to it, and they jammed the hose into this was between shots into the mask of the mouth of the mask that the guy was wearing, so that he could get bathed in nice cool air and cool off a little bit. And I remember thinking, that's so cool. There's somebody in there.
Yeah,
somebody built this costume for this guy, and the illusion makes it seem like there's all these cool aliens hanging out in Jabba's palace. And there was a time when I was a little kid where I was like, that's my dream job.
Yeah.
I want to do practical effects.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, everything else is CGI now. Like,
dang it.
So the process that they
born a decade too late.
Yeah. The process they went through in the movie, I kind of went through, one afternoon when I was like 9 or something.
And then it just flashed before your eyes. You're like, oh man.
I was like, yep, the world has moved on.
I mean,
what did Phil Patton say? I feel extinct.
I don't know that one.
Did you see that one? Oh, it was in one of the later episodes where they had planned on doing the majority of Jurassic Park with stop motion animation with the dinosaurs.
Oh, yes.
And then they figured out they could do it CGI, and then one of the main animators was really brokenhearted because he'd done all this work and he sort of felt like the world was moving on. And he said he was talking to Spielberg, and he used that line. He said, I feel extinct. And Spielberg was like, that's a great line. I'll put it in the movie, which is not very compassionate.
But hey, you can be like, I expressed this emotion and it's in there now.
It's in there now.
So that's, I have to still see the last episode. So that if it's Jurassic Park, then I have to see that one still.
But yeah, what a wild time in the early days of ILM. Just seemed completely kind of Wild West,
I want to talk a little bit about I guess just George Lucas in general in this. And I want a question for you is how do you feel that he was portrayed in this? How did you feel him like in many of the moments I was inspired by him and I was like in awe at what he did and his style and everything. In a couple moments I was like, oh man, he's just a human.
Yeah.
Just like any one of us, right? And like very business focused, but like I found the fallout with him and Dykstra. I should say like most of this stuff was new to me. I think some people were like, oh, I didn't know. I already knew that or something like that. Most of this was new to me. So even if this was known beforehand, like I'm kind of getting a first dose of some of this stuff. So like the fallout with George Lucas and Dykstra, like that felt tough.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how does George feel about that today? Like, if you were to ask him how he feels about it, I would imagine he would be like, look, what happened, and it's in the past now, and it's not much I can do about it. But I don't know. I can't really sense him being like super angry or like and like having a rift still with him. He just doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But maybe he does.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't get that vibe from him, but I think it's cool that, we're now 45 years removed or whatever it is from when they first set up shop.
Yeah.
And you can see the impact that both of those guys have had, not just on Star Wars, but on movie making in general.
Yeah. Like, Dexter's got a camera named after him.
Yeah. Like
right.
they talk about right away of like he was out of the picture, but his inventions and his innovations were not. They were still part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
So I think both of them can probably look back and be proud about what they accomplished together, and probably what they accomplished apart. But
yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so I'll share my hot take with you because it's a reflection, I think, on how I view George Lucas now. I think George Lucas. So again, this is a hot take.
Okay.
So you may want to sit down if you're not sitting down.
A good thing I am.
George Lucas gets too much credit for Star Wars.
Oh, that's not too hot. I agree. I understand why you're saying it's a hot take, but yeah.
He gets too much credit for Star Wars. He doesn't get enough credit for the advances in movie making in general over the last 40-ish years.
And I feel like this made sure to give him a little bit more, a lot more of that. And it's probably just for us. Maybe we didn't appreciate how much contributions he made. I think for me, it was the fact that he realized that there was so much he wanted the technology to be able to do, and he was going to make that investment himself if nobody else would.
He put up his own money a bunch of times.
Exactly. And the fact that he was basically leading two companies.
Two countries.
No, like not two companies. Because eventually he created Lucasfilm, right? But which separate, right? But yeah, he was leading like two different bodies of work. Like, I'm creating film over here, but I'm trying to lead this technology group over here and inspire it and push it in the direction it needs to go. So, like, he had feet in both of those arenas. Like, how does a man do all that? So that's why your take isn't that hot, because there's no way he could have done all of that.
He couldn't. And I think some of the stuff that's absolutely iconic that we kind of hang our hat on when we think Star Wars and we think, lightsabers and the look of the droids and a lot of the visual stuff, the sounds that you hear, the music and so on, it's not coming directly out of George Lucas's brain.
Well, the story is his.
And so that's something I wrote down in my notes. Like, I think that this whole documentary for me went in a circle of step one was basically George Lucas says a couple times, everything is in the service of the story.
Yeah.
Like the special effects only work if they are helping the story along.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what's the opposite of that? And I thought of Avatar, where I was like, special effects bonanza. I don't even remember what the plot really is.
I've watched 1 hour of that movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That was it.
Okay.
That's all I needed. And I didn't fall in love with the story. The visuals looked great.
Amazing.
Right? But it just didn't capture me.
But yeah, so...
This was many years after it came out, so maybe that was I was like a little tired of the corporate is evil storyline too. So there was a lot of that could have factored in.
That's true. but yeah, everything is in service to the story, and ultimately
Yeah.
comes back to that, and it is George's story.
Yeah, it's his story. So before this, I always knew he was a great storyteller, a great director. What I walked away from this feeling a little bit more was he's a great leader.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that stuck out to me. One, he talked about how I think we talked about this, how he would inspire people, and how it would be more like, well, just give it a try. Right? That's just an inspiring way to lead. And I mean, we see CEOs and companies all the time, celebrity CEOs in a lot of instances, and none of them do stuff like that. At least not publicly for us to see. I just imagine if a leader did that for everybody. They just kind of walked in and was like, all right, instead of saying you better get this done or else your job is on the line, he's like, give it a try. Just give it a shot and think about it, and then let me know where you get. And that was it.
And I think
they came up with great solutions after that.
And I think that was just like particularly good for those types of people.
Yeah.
For people who like all those people who worked there really cared about trying to find a way to like make it work, whatever it was.
Yeah.
The Rancor, like we can't, we'll try a million different things to make it work.
Yeah.
They care about getting it right.
By the way, Rancor, the potato bear.
Yes.
They like calling that out. I was like,
featured prominently. So we've been talking about that for a long time on the podcast.
Batista the potato bear.
And if you're new to the show, Ben told me a long time ago that they thought of the Rancor as something like a cross between a bear and a potato. And I was like, that's crazy, but I kind of see it.
And then they say it again there. So, I mean, like, I found it somewhere, so obviously it was true.
It was true, yeah. We heard it right from the creature makers. But
yeah.
I just think that he was a great leader for those types of people. And he's probably a great leader in general because look at all the different things he's built along the way. But I think he found a really safe, non-threatening way to get people excited about their work and to get them to try stuff that they wouldn't
have normally done, or even that, like him saying that is like helps to relieve some of the stress. Instead of you feeling like I better figure this out or else my job is on the line, you're thinking I want to figure this out.
Yeah,
because I would just love to be the guy that figured it out.
Yeah,
and that's it.
And you know what else I think really worked in ILM's favor early on was the fact that there were so many, not just because they were young, but inexperienced people who didn't have years in showbiz.
Yeah, exactly.
People who had
same background or something. Yeah,
some creative talent, some ability, but weren't like Hollywood at all. And also didn't have this whole thing of being burdened by all the ways that you think something can't work.
Yeah,
there wasn't a whole lot of like I've seen people try that. There wasn't cynicism. There wasn't like you can't do that. People have tried to and they failed.
No, they talked about like solving problems together around the water cooler. Like, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. Can you kind of help me think through it? And like, that's by the way, very vulnerable thing to do. To admit, I have a problem that I can't solve. Do you think you could help me? No ego. Again, safe environment to just go up to any one of your peers and say, could you help me? Not a lot of places have that, right? But it's very critical for high performing teams to be able to do that. In fact, I just started my next class in my MBA last night, and it's all about teams and group dynamics. And we talked about the difference between like a working group, a pseudo team. What was the next one on the list? It was like a potential team, and then a real team, which is most of the good teams we've worked on hopefully reach that level of a real team. And then there's a high performing team. Like I would categorize this as like a high performing team. Big time. Right? Big time. Everyone was in sync, had each other's back, worked together, played together, all that kind of stuff. And they just had, they were there for each other. Before I forget it though, the other thing that George Lucas was really good at, and I appreciated this. It was the one story of Joe Johnston and how Joe came to him. He was basically like, look, I've done 3 movies with you in the art department and I'm officially kind of burned out and done. And instead of being like, fine, hit the road, I'll find someone else, or all right, sucks, good luck, have a good life. He was like, well, what about film school? and he's like, really? Like, I mean, I need a break, but he's like, well, go at your pace kind of thing. I'll pay for it. And the fact that George just did that for him. And this is the guy that then went on to make Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And I'm trying to remember some of the other ones, but like one of my other favorites, Captain America, the first Avenger. Just all this stuff. First of all, I forgot how instrumental that Joe was to Star Wars. When they talked about his inspiration for the Millennium Falcon with dirty dishes in the sink.
It's not crazy.
That's so crazy. But more just the fact that George did that for him, you know, and like after all that Joe had done for ILM, like awesome. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he didn't just say like, no, I want you doing art the rest of your life because you do that well for me. It wasn't about what is in it for George.
Yeah, it wasn't, do art for me or nothing at the road. Hope you have a nice life. Yeah.
It was, I'll support you in where you want to go and we'll help you get there, whatever it takes. Because, he cared about people.
Super cool.
And like the way he threw the parties and stuff and was there just mingling with them. Like he's officially a celebrity at this point and he's mingling with everyone at ILM. I
guess I just have a hard time picturing it because I think, and I don't know if it's because, I've seen a lot of interviews, posts like prequels, stuff like that. I never really got the warm and fuzzies from George Lucas.
No, I feel like I'd be so intimidated seeing him because of everything he's done. But yeah, I would agree with that.
But I think they're in there. I think he's.
Oh yeah.
I think he's got heart, which is really cool to see.
Do you remember? I don't remember where it was, but there was a video on YouTube that got posted that somebody was like outside an art museum.
Oh, and he just walks by.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I think that's the type of guy he is. He just kind of unassumingly like in there, like, I'm George Lucas. No security around me. I'm just going to the art museum.
I've got my flannel shirt tucked in. I'm wearing my white New Balances.
Yes. That was so great. Anyway, where else do you want to go in this? I have a question for you if you don't have a specific place.
No, I think that the first couple of years were like something really special, and seeing how they had to improvise stuff and like especially some stuff I didn't realize before, like the surface of the Death Star is the same 6 panels over and over again.
Yeah,
mixed up in different sequences and things like that, so you don't see the repetition.
Or just the fact that the trenches were created on the Death Star so that they could show the speed of the ships.
Yes.
That was interesting.
Very interesting. And there's a lot of stuff that's just iconic about that very first movie that was deeply rooted in some way and them just winging it. Like there's a lot of improvising.
Yeah.
But and I think George's role sometimes seemed like he would sit back a little bit, let them improvise, and kind of say like, "Oh, I like this, but maybe we can just kind of like tweak this."
Yeah.
And I like that, but maybe we can take this part of it away. So some of it was him like just reacting to the cool stuff that they are creating and throwing at him, which I think is really neat.
Yeah. Again, that getting back to your hot take, that's why you can't all say like it's on him. Like it's on his ability to lead others.
Yeah.
That got them to do all of that.
And you know what else I was thinking about? This that is precisely the reason that you and I sit in the theater until the end of the credits.
Yeah.
And admire.
To read every name out loud. And clap for them as they scroll across the screen, right?
Yes. Every single one. Sometimes it's hard. A lot of people work on movies.
They do. Sometimes they go fast. Especially like on TV. They're just like, okay, we got to get to the next programming.
And then I always just sit there and go, what is a best boy?
Yeah.
What is a key grip?
Yeah. And then you get your phone out and Google it.
And then you're like, oh, so-and-so was the lead creature effects person in Iceland or whatever.
I'm trying to think of a good other one that I see usually. But it's not the I like seeing all the assistants to the stars too.
Assistant to the second assistant veterinarian for the camel that was on set. Or the
catering. When they showed like catering was done by,
Well, that's crazy that catering gets in there. I mean, it's great.
It's like free advertisement for them, right?
Yeah.
I would hope.
I think you and I are the only ones that read it.
Maybe.
Catering by Barry's Kebabs or something. It's like...
graciously paid for by Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, no kebabs were harmed in the making
All right, my question for you,
Please.
before we get lost and sidetracked again, what were some of your favorite things that you learned? Things that you didn't know before this, things that maybe you knew but didn't fully appreciate. Maybe just like the simple little factoid. Like, I'll start and give you one. One of my favorites was Dennis not liking Ralph McQuarrie's clouds, and
tricking him
to let him do the clouds.
Yes,
that killed me. That was hilarious.
I love,
especially because it's
it.
the great Ralph McQuarrie.
Yes, who's like infallible. Like his work is Star Wars, but I guess he couldn't paint a cloud. That's okay.
Yeah,
we're none of us are perfect.
Some of us.
Some of us. I'm not. I'll speak for myself.
I'm not either.
Some of my favorite things, I enjoyed seeing like the different parts of the company that sort of grew up and blossomed just because this environment was so creative. Like, I didn't know that Pixar came out of there.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know that either. I mean, I knew Steve Jobs bought it, but I didn't realize, that it came out of ILM and that it was, I guess, just like an imaging computer.
Yeah, and he liked it and he wanted to keep the name, and George Lucas was like, go ahead, you can have that for $57 million, sure. I had no idea about that. That was super cool. I didn't know that Photoshop came out of there. No idea.
I didn't know that one, yeah.
But these are the types of things that are happening, I think, when you're really trying to push the envelope. And after watching this documentary, by the way, I get some of the criticism. So I think George Lucas has not spoken much about the sequel trilogy. A few things here and there.
Sure.
One of the things, though, that he said publicly was he wishes that they would have pushed the envelope of technology when making these Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And looking back on this documentary now, it's like, of course he did.
Right.
That's what George Lucas does. And I guess I never appreciated the extent to which he did that with like digital projectors and trying to get theaters to get digital projectors. I didn't know that he was behind a lot of that.
Yeah, actually, no, I'm the same.
It's pretty wild. Like I remember hearing stuff about like THX sound systems.
Yeah.
And really pushing that. So it's amazing to me that on top of the storytelling, and again, George Lucas is all about like it's in service of the story.
Mm-hmm.
We've all really benefited from the ingenuity of all the people at this company when we go and we watch and we listen to a movie in a theater.
Yeah.
And use other technologies too. So those are a few of my favorite things. But to be more specific, I'll say the making of the Tauntaun was really cool.
You like Tauntauns?
I love Tauntauns. I liked just seeing them taking it from concept to concept and editing it and so on, and then talking about the whole process of finding the fur. To stick in there and stuff.
Yep.
And then seeing that model up close and seeing the model maker and the animators hanging around the model and articulating it, moving it around and stuff and explaining different things on it. That's something I've been looking at my whole life.
Yeah.
I've been watching the Tauntaun run by. So that was one of the things where I don't know about you, but I feel like if a magician explains to me how they do the trick loses something for me.
Oh, totally.
Bit.
Yeah.
But if you show me how they made the movie,
I'm in awe.
In absolute awe.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Awestruck.
I don't know what the difference is, but that's
well, the difference is that you're realizing you're being tricked, and there's a secret to it that you're just not privy to, and it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just like we kind of lose sight of how much skill is really involved with pulling off magic like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for stuff like this, we see the skill that is involved.
Yes.
And the ingenuity that's involved.
True.
In creating what we see on screen. And we're like, I had no idea it could be done like that.
Yeah.
Or that it was that hard.
Yeah.
That's another thing. It was like we realized just how hard it is. Again, I'm not downplaying how hard it is to pull off magic, because sometimes I'm like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
But when you just realize it's a couple simple steps that anybody could do, like saw the person in half trick, and you're like, oh, it's two different people. Okay, I guess anyone could do that. Have you not seen Arrested Development? There it is, my obligatory, what's it called, sitcom plug right there.
Yep.
No, all right. So on that note, though, one of the things that I was completely floored by was matte paintings.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, good.
I don't think I really knew what they were before.
I didn't.
How would you describe it, just in case somebody hasn't watched it?
It's basically like it's basically like what they would do before CGI, before to create an environment that was artistic and beautiful, but also allowed them to continue filming on it, and it wasn't real, just like CGI, right? It's I guess more specifically, it was a big canvas that they would paint on that would then eventually be transformed into film.
Yeah.
And then whatever scene that they were shooting there's like always that blank spot where like this is where this scene the film screen scene will go, and then it's just superimposed on it.
Yep.
And what floored me was the artistic ability of these people to create these beautiful paintings. And they gave some numbers. They said in the it was about a dozen matte paintings that they did for Star Wars, but then it was about 50-ish in Empire. So then they completely upped it.
Do you think that those are still around somewhere?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they are. They're worth thousands, if not more.
How cool would it be to see like Ralph McQuarrie's matte painting of Bespin or something?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Like the bit where the Millennium Falcon is kind of perched out on that ledge, and Han and team come out and they're approaching Lando. Yeah. Like that scene, like that would be so cool to see that in person.
Let's go find one. I want to go find one and see like how much are these matte paintings worth? That's a good question.
Give it a Google.
I will give it a Google. While you tell me another thing that you really liked.
Another thing that I really liked. So I don't want to go back to Empire too much, but I did love all the Hoth stuff. I love the conceptualization of creating an AT-AT and thinking about like wanting to. I guess they wanted a tank at first, but they wanted it to not look like a tank. And one of the people at ILM wisely said, as long as it has treads, it's going to look like a tank. And so they came up with this walking thing. And I love the whole thing of like, oh, we should have it have a neck that articulates, and we should have it have guns that sort of look like fangs and stuff like that. And I guess I never really thought about how much of the animal kingdom they borrowed from to be able to create these things. But
yeah,
I loved seeing them create the shot where they fly between the legs of the AT-AT.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was super cool.
I like that one too, and just like taking the one out in between.
Yep.
Yep.
But again, going back to my point or my hot take earlier about how George Lucas gets too much credit for Star Wars, like these guys dreamed up this walking thing, and like one of the coolest sequences in Empire is when they tangle up the legs of the AT-AT and trip it so it falls down, and that's how they figure out how to take them out.
Yeah.
And that's all a result of the ingenuity of the people at ILM creating this monster weapon, and that becomes part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing to see too, like how the stop motion. I didn't realize how much of a factor stop motion played in it.
Oh
and
yeah.
How well done it is.
It's so well done.
Like I remember all the like stop motion that I've ever seen has always been, it feels like you can see I guess I'm thinking of, remember like the Christmas specials that they did in all stop motion.
Oh yeah, it looks like their fur is like fluttering around and stuff from like where the animators touch them.
And I know that's like 60s and stuff like that, maybe a little bit older, but like that's where I think when I think of stop motion, that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
is that, and then I'm looking at this like that just doesn't feel like the same thing.
Right.
Right, but it is.
It is, and I think they just did such a good job of like adding all the different details to the ships and stuff like that. And I think they talked about that in the very beginning about how George Lucas loved Flash Gordon, but didn't want like these like smooth, glassy looking spaceships. Like they wanted to have all these different details on them and things like that. And I think they did such a nice job of including those and then covering them with like bits of snow or whatever it was. It just it seemed so real.
Yeah.
And again, I love that these weren't like Hollywood lifers. They weren't people who like the people who made Star Wars. almost like it couldn't have been made by any like Hollywood lifers at the time. Like anybody who was a special effects expert at the time couldn't have made Star Wars because they would have been limited by what they knew.
But whatever the studio had, and frankly, like probably because they would be looking at each other like, sorry, we really just can't do that. Like what you're asking us to do here is impossible. There's nothing exists to do this.
And meanwhile, this bunch of kids who was just hanging out in this warehouse somewhere in California
figuring it all out
was like, well, I don't know. George said, think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see what we could do.
Let's see what comes up. I found it really funny, the cliffhanger of the first episode. Not funny, but like, all right, we finished 2 shots for him, and we had 400 to do.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand why George was not happy about that.
Totally.
The other thing, though, that I really liked was the fun little gags that they talked about. The fact that the asteroids in Empire were potatoes.
Love it.
In some instances. That they used shoes, yogurt cups, and gum in space for Return of the Jedi.
And he points them out.
and he's like, this.
You would never know.
Exactly. Because they're like off in the distance. You have no idea. So I thought that was funny. What else? Even just like, I guess I love Jedi, right? Jedi is probably, have I decided that is my number 1 or 2? I can't remember, but it is my favorite Star Wars movie. I'm pretty sure. It's just hard to ever pick a favorite, but I just didn't really fully appreciate how much CGI or not CGI. What's the word I'm looking for? Special effects went into it, but like, you can see the difference between the first Star Wars and A New Hope and Jedi. Oh, yeah. I can see it a lot more now than I feel like I saw before.
Yeah.
Just because of how far they had come. And it's a really interesting measuring stick to see like how far they've come.
And speaking of which, this is a question I want to ask you. Like, how do you feel about the fact that George Lucas went back and retouched all the movies and added and changed things in the 1990s after watching this?
Here's the thing. I mean, I guess I was about to say, like, he didn't really impact the story in doing that. But in a couple instances, he like added whole clips, like the one with Han Solo and Jabba in New Hope, like their confrontation in front of the Millennium Falcon, which I always felt was weird because it felt like there were a lot of repeated lines.
Yes.
And like I didn't need to hear him say those again.
Yeah.
So that was always a little bit weird. So I would have said, if he didn't touch the story, then he hasn't broken his rule. But he kind of did.
Yeah.
In a few instances. So I don't feel like I love him or hate him.
Okay.
They are. And it's been so much time now that I feel like I forgot.
I forget about it too, but I used to, I don't know, begrudgingly accept them. Like, well, I guess, it's his sandbox. He can play in it however he wants.
Yeah, it's his movie.
But at the same time, I think I get it more now. I think it makes more sense to me because I feel like this documentary gets in his head a little bit and shows you what's important. It does seem like he's a little bit of I don't want to say he's like a crazy perfectionist, but he has a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's some part of his vision he wasn't able to realize because technology wasn't ready or whatever else, I can see why he would want to come back later when the technology is ready and go, I just want to I want to make the Death Star blow up like this. Always wanted to, couldn't do it before.
Especially on A New Hope too, because you heard about how stressed out they were by the end of it and how they didn't fully appreciate how great it was received because of how exhausting the experience was. And I think I think it's fair that he at the end of it he had some regrets or wished it turned out a little bit differently and things like that. And if later on in life he's like, you know what, can I go and change a couple of those things now with the technology I have available to me? Sure, go right ahead. It is funny. I always think like, I hope you're not doing it just because the technology advanced and you can do this now, because you're getting dangerously close to just remaking the film at that point.
Yeah.
And I look back at what's it called? The prequel trilogy now. I'm like, even some of that's starting to look dated. You wouldn't do that to those films though, would you?
I hope
you're
not.
pausing too long and it's scaring me.
I don't know. I'm thinking. I hope not. I hope not. I mean, like I watch Revenge of the Sith, the opening scene, like 10 times a year. It's
That's
perfect.
fantastic. Yes.
It's perfect. Don't touch it.
Do not touch that opening scene.
Yeah.
I would 1,000% agree with you on that. It's just so inspiring. Like the drumming and everything at the beginning, the way it zooms in, the way it follows the ships into battle without seeing the battle.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just perfection.
So don't mess with stuff like that. But I guess you never know. I actually looked up and, going through this whole thing, it seemed like he was so prolific for so long, and then he was just like, I'm good. I'm going to retire from major motion pictures.
Yeah.
And it's been over 10 years at this point since he produced anything. And I think 2012 he stepped in for some reshoots on the film Red Tails, which I never saw.
I never saw it too, but that was another one of his, yeah.
And I don't think he's done that since then.
Yeah.
So a decade has gone by. But like we started out the podcast talking about John Boyega and Never Say Never. You never know if he might come back and start getting the tools out to retouch everything that we love and hold dear.
I think one, he's made his money. Two, he's just going to play the consultant. Yeah. Take what I say or not. I've completely like overturned this industry. Yeah. And so, yeah,
that's
take what point. I say or not.
he can't possibly feel like there's more to be done in the sense like, I wish I could have accomplished more in my career. Like, you changed the world, dude.
Yeah, you changed the world of film.
You're good.
And ILM, as they kind of talked about, like, is involved with so many films today, so many, just because of everything you've done. So it's not just Star Wars that you made here; it's that you've made better. Yeah. It's all a film. Yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park is a fantastic movie. Yeah. Oh, that's another one that Joe Johnston did, was Jurassic Park 3. Yeah, Jurassic Park's fantastic. Yeah. Like, and we all have, ILM to thank for that.
And it holds up to this day. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because I saw it as a kid and I was totally in awe of it, but I feel like it holds up to this day and it's still good. Oh, by the way, that had a really nice final word quality to it.
What?
Your last statements.
What'd I say?
I don't want to rehash it because you said it so perfectly.
What'd I say?
Well, you kind of wrap things up really nicely.
I was working on it. I feel like we're getting to that point. Yep. I will say one more thing, and this might be the last thing that I say of what I really liked. The episode of I Think I Found My People, where it was going through interviewing all these people that kind of came later on. John Knoll being one of them, and just the people that are have been more recently at ILM. I don't know. I really like that. It got me thinking afterwards just how many individual stories there are of people. Gosh, like we get so intently focused on the story of George Lucas or Dykstra, or Phil Tippett in this movie, like the
Kathleen Kennedy, whoever
Kathleen
else.
Kennedy, right? You name them, the celebrities that are behind it all, and the fact that they just spent a whole episode where they showed the guy from Toronto, the hockey player who Spaz, that's what his name was, and like falling in love over Alice Cooper with his buddy, and I just, the fact that they showed like just the everyday person at ILM and what it was kind of like the experience of working there today, that I appreciated a lot. Yes, the more behind the scenes, because I guess I just have something for like wanting to get to know the stories of the everyday person. Yeah. Because people like you and me, I think we have a story to share. Yeah. Right? Even if it's not as interesting or as impactful as a George Lucas, like we have something to share. Yeah. So give them the spotlight. Give them a little bit of time to share that. And they did. So I love that. I loved that they did that.
I wonder if Spaz has a podcast.
I would like to listen to it if he does.
I would too, very much.
I would just like to hang out with him for a day.
Totally.
Like play hockey with him, watch hockey, whatever he wants to do.
I don't know if I could hang back in the day, like when he was in his 20s.
The stories that they were telling, the parties that they were throwing. Yikes.
Now it should be good, but back then I would kind of be like, I think I'm going to go, guys. You guys have fun.
Yep. Yeah. We're the introverts in the room.
Yep. Totally.
Yep. Exactly. All right. I ruined the close.
No, it's perfect.
I don't know how else to close this, but
just like that.
I learned a lot.
Me too. I mean, a lot of what was in this docuseries I just never seen before, never heard before.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I love stuff that rounds out my understanding of Star Wars.
rounds out understanding of Star Wars and gives me a different vantage point and a deeper appreciation of filmmaking.
Yes, sir.
It's a great art. It's something that I know if my wife could turn back time, she would probably go into the industry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's told me that many times.
Very cool.
So I can understand why people like you when you were a kid are inspired by it and think about, oh man, what if I did that?
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
So we live vicariously through them.
Yes.
This is what we do.
Yep.
Anyway, what are we talking about the next time that we get together? Or maybe we should tell people when we will get back together too.
Yeah, we're going to get back together in a couple of weeks. I think it's going to be the second week of September.
It'll be probably like 3 weeks from now
in
total, because you're going on a nice vacation.
Yes.
So have fun.
Thank you. I will.
We've done a lot of traveling, you and I, the last few months.
We're making up for lost time.
We really are.
We're coming out of the pandemic, and we're trying to make the most of being able to go out and see the world. And,
yes.
So I'll be in Mexico for a week. But we are going to come back and talk about Obi-Wan. We're going to talk about life lessons from Obi-Wan. We're going to talk about what we learned from that terrific series. And this is going to give us time to go back and rewatch it.
It will. And it'll give us time to watch the behind the scenes on September 8th.
Yes.
It'll also give me, because I also got the Be More Obi-Wan book, and it'll give me some time to read that and maybe bring some of that perspective into this, this when we talk about it, with the life lessons that come from the book as well as the series. I'm looking forward to it. And then after that, we get Andor.
Yes.
So
right around the corner, we're going to get, what is it again? The first 3 episodes?
That's what I thought. Yeah. So we'll have a lot to cover in that first.
Whew. Yeah. September's going to be awesome. And then in October, we are going to Comic-Con, and then Andor runs until just before Thanksgiving. So
just crazy. Wonderful.
Let's catch our breath here. It's going to be a jam-packed fall.
Lots to cover. I cannot wait. And we have Lord of the Rings starting in a week or so.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's
There's
right.
There's so much great stuff coming out.
Totally.
Right now. Lord of the Rings is coming. We've got She-Hulk going on right now. In fact, I'm going to go watch it right after I stop recording now.
Nice.
We are spoiled right now. And eventually Bad Batch again and Mandalorian 3.
Yep. So, hey, dear listeners, whatever you're excited about, let us know. Tweet us at Star Bros Podcast on Twitter. We'd love to hear what you're looking forward to watching, or just tag us in your memes. That's cool too.
Yeah.
You can send us an email at thestarbrospodcast@gmail.com. And your email doesn't have to be necessarily about this episode or what you're excited to see. It could just be you saying hello and telling us what you like about Star Wars and what you're enjoying these days. That's always fun. And if you like the show, please do subscribe, leave a review, and just thank you for listening.
Yeah. And thank you to our buddy Dan, who signed this email that he just sent us.
I saw
Randy Pet Boys. I loved it. Thank you for the last email that you sent us.
Thank you, Dan.
We will be responding to you very shortly.
Yes, we appreciate it.
And as you can see, we appreciate anybody that reaches out and shares a thought with us, shares an idea with us for what to cover next. So keep the ideas coming. Keep the engagement. Thank you for being here. Just for listening, for participating, for just being, honestly. So I'm going to go deep with that one. But no, really, we appreciate everything that everything that you guys bring to the Star Wars universe as well. Hopefully, like we're trying to have a positive impact, you're having a positive impact out there too.
Amen.
On that note, it's a wrap.
I didn't see that coming.
I didn't let you see it.
Wow.